Thanks very much for staying with us. Time now for Eye on Africa with me, Georgia Calvin-Smith. Tonight, Nigeria's President Muhammadu Buhari becomes the first sub-Saharan African leader to head to the White House during Donald Trump's administration. The two men sidestep Trump's past, perhaps tactless comments about Africa and focus on boosting security and trade ties. Also, protests in Madagascar enter their 8th day as opposition MPs keep up their calls for the president to quit. We hear from our correspondent on the ground. And there's worry in Uganda about the impact of a planned tax on social media use. Critics accuse the government of trying to stifle dissent. But first, trade and security were top of the agenda when the president of Nigeria and the US met in Washington on Monday. Muhammadu Buhari became the first African leader to visit the White House during Donald Trump's administration. Despite tactless statements Trump has made about Africans in the past, the two men said that they were interested in boosting economic ties.
We give Nigeria well over $1 billion in aid every year, and we have already started talking with the president about taking down the trade barriers, very substantial barriers to the United States trading with Nigeria. So we think that we are owed that.
I extend sincere congratulations to President Trump and his government on the impressive performance of the United States economy under his watch. Our aim is to diversify our own economy by focusing on agriculture and food security, power and infrastructure.
Well, Sam Olukoya joins us now with more. Sam, Donald Trump sounds very keen to get rid of those Nigerian trade barriers. He says that he thinks that the US is owed that. Is this meeting likely to have much of an effect on the Nigerian policy?
Well, I think it's going to be a very hard choice for the Nigerian government. I mean, the American president said as much as $1 billion aid is being given to Nigeria. So what he's indirectly saying is that, I mean, you have to cut down these barriers, otherwise we tamper with this aid. So that would be a difficult one for the Nigerians. But I know that the Nigerian government had actually been trying to cut down on importation and cutting down these barriers and allowing American goods to flow into Nigeria may not actually be received well in Nigeria. We've seen the impact in the past when Chinese goods flooded the markets. It actually affected the local industries.
So what more can you tell us about what came out of Monday's meeting between Trump and Buhari?
Well, they mentioned, I mean, the meeting addressed a wide range of issues. There was human rights issues, there was trade and investment, there was, importantly, the security aspect of it, given that Nigeria is battling Islamists in the northeastern part of the country. And essentially, America is going to supply Nigeria with arms to combat this problem. America is going to send in a lot of agricultural produce to Nigeria. And then in terms of humanitarian assistance also in the northeastern part of Nigeria where there's a humanitarian crisis, America is going to also assist. And then in terms of investments, a $2 billion agreement was signed for the upgrading of Nigeria's railway system. So quite a lot of things were agreed at this meeting.
So how much has changed in terms of Nigeria's relationship with the States under the Trump administration in comparison to when Barack Obama was still in office?
I think substantially a lot has changed, given that, to start with, both presidents are discussing. We never saw this during the Barack Obama administration, even though Nigerians felt Obama should have been more open than he was. Now President Trump said the barriers created during the Obama administration that made it impossible for Nigeria to get arms from the United States. He has actually removed that subsequently Nigeria will be getting arms from the United States. So that has actually changed. And then I think another aspect is the issue of trade barriers. President Obama never actually forced Nigeria to lift these barriers, but we are seeing President Trump advocating that Nigeria should lift the barrier, or otherwise the $2 billion aid it gets annually might be in danger.
Thanks very much. Samuel Okoye there for us in Nigeria. In other news, protests continued in Madagascar on Monday after its president, Eri Rajaonarimampianina, ruled out any chance of his resignation. The opposition accuses him of trying to elbow them out of elections due later this year. Demonstrations have lasted for 8 days, and opposition MPs on Monday tried to get public servants to join them to swell their ranks. As Gael Borja tells us, they had little success.
On Monday, MPs took it to the next level after a week of street protests over oppression and corruption of the government. They left the usual place of demonstration at the town hall of the capital to go to public service buildings. They wanted to launch a general strike by blocking administration. They went door to door to several ministries, sometimes going into buildings to call on civil servants to join them. But it didn't really work. Less than 500 people joined the protests. To avoid confrontation with MPs, a lot of civil servants left the buildings before the protesters arrived. Some admitted they are afraid of joining the movement.
They are afraid of dying during the protest. This is why our ministry doesn't want to get involved, and also because protesters force civil servants to join them.
The protest will continue on Tuesday. Despite the ongoing unrest, President Eri refuses to step down and called for dialogue with the opposition.
Gael Borja there for us. A look now at some other news. 10 aid workers kidnapped in South Sudan a week ago have been released. 3 UN staff and 7 aid workers went missing when their convoy was hijacked in central Equatoria. It's the second such kidnapping in less than a month. Rights groups have warned that attacks on aid workers have become the norm as the country's civil war drags on. A member of Burundi's ruling party was sentenced to 3 years in jail on Monday for urging government supporters to throw opponents into a lake. Melchiad Zopfa-Baruch was arrested on Sunday after he made the comment at a party rally. It comes amidst increased political tensions ahead of a referendum due in mid-May on extending President Pierre Nkurunziza's term in office. Conservationists have warned that biodiversity in the Lake Victoria Basin is being decimated. A report from the International Union for the Conservation of Nature assessed the freshwater species in Africa's largest lake and found that 3/4 of those species endemic to the area are at risk of extinction. The lake stretches from Kenya, Tanzania and Uganda and touches Burundi and Rwanda. Investigators say industrial and agricultural pollution, overharvesting and land harvesting are the main threats to regional biodiversity. Well, in Uganda, there are concerns that plans to bring in a new tax on social media use will stifle freedom of speech in the country. The government says the moves to bring in more revenue, but critics accuse President Yoweri Museveni of trying to silence dissent. Shirley Sitman tells us more.
Creating a tax on social media? Ugandans aren't really enthusiastic about the government's latest idea.
In 2016, the UN Commission said that internet is a basic right, it's a human right. So I don't think I need to be taxed for something that is viewed globally as a human right.
Others are concerned about the fallout of the new tax on their business, like this shopping platform.
This is a form of double taxation because originally we know that on the airtime that we pay and the data that we use, we pay taxes on. And of course, as companies, we also pay corporation tax. So these are the tools that we are using to make money, and we are being limited on them. And so it's quite very, very inconveniencing.
The government has a different approach. It says the tax will refill state coffers, plus it would get Ugandans away from social networks and bring them back to work.
I believe the president's idea of taxing social media is going to solve the problem of idleness and all that. So, in my opinion, I really encourage it, though it shouldn't be too much, to limit people's freedoms of expression.
During the 2016 election campaign, authorities blocked several social media sites. Since then, Ugandans have been vigilant. Many have called on lawmakers to block the bill when it will be debated in Parliament.
Well, that's it for Eye on Africa. Thanks for joining us. Do so again. Take care.
Reporters, presented by Mark Owen.
Legionnaires. They come from all around the world. They serve a country that isn't their own. They learn to fight, to get along, to stick together. But who are these men really? To find out, our reporters followed them on operation in Mali. Don't miss our report, The Foreign Legion, Another French Exception, on France 24 and France24.com.